And welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. And we are now at part 2, well, really kind of like 1.5 of this week's new comics, bitches! So let's continue, and let's actually talk about comic books this time. Okay? So let's start with Marvel. Now, obviously, if you didn't see it, you should, because we just talked about, early last week, on Thursday of last week, I recorded my thoughts, my very, very negative thoughts on Avengers versus X-Men. So no more will be said about that. I wasted 15 minutes talking about that. Well, not wasted, but spent 15 minutes talking about just that one issue and why it's so bad. So I'm just going to leave off on that one. So, moving along with Marvel, we've got Amazing Spider-Man 683. Because I was able to get some figures, trade them into the store, and get my copies of the comics. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 683. So we've got basically part 2 of Ends of the World. And we've got, the fallout from the first issue. Basically, we had, Doc Ock is basically saying, okay, well, he can completely reverse global warming and its effects, but he can also turn them up so it could, kill, hundreds upon millions of people if he really wants to. So he wants to basically kind of get everybody on his side. And then there's this big summit in Rome in which some of the world's foremost leaders and foremost scientific minds are there to discuss what the hell they're going to do. Now, I'm not a huge fan of using real people in comics. I think that it's kind of, it can almost be to the point of self-parody, and that does bother me. And Dan Slott, obviously he's done some stuff, with, there's been, Barack Obama, and, even Stephen Colbert has been on, and in issues of Amazing Spider-Man. But, this one, it has, a lot of world leaders. It has, well, it sort of has Al Gore, because it actually turns out to be the chameleon. And basically, again, and also has Dr. Stephen Hawking, and some of these things it just bugs me. I don't like I said, I think that it tries to insert more reality than what is necessary. So, anywho, we've got that, and that kind of goes tits up, even though we've got Spider-Man in his new suit, his new armor that is actually kind of tricked out to counter all of the Sinister Six's moves. But the Sinister Six, they've also spent a lot of time, as we see in this issue, preparing for fighting the Avengers, because they know that, Spider-Man is now an Avenger, and Spider-Man has been their primary, antagonist, if you will. And, he's had the most experience with them, so they need to get themselves set and ready to go. And they have. And there's... but the one thing that also bothered me was... I don't even know... I don't know how this is even legal. Obviously, I don't want this to turn into a big law debate. But with... Jonah Jameson essentially shutting down all power to Horizon Labs, that seems like a really, really big abuse of power for Jonah. I don't think that the mayor of the city should be allowed to do that. Essentially, he's almost becoming like the Walter Peck character from Ghostbusters. He's as far as, there are these people that are out there that are trying to save lives and create new things, and it's certainly not their fault that whatever happened on the space station, just in the arc, in the 2-issue arc previously with John Jameson, has anything to do with Horizon, it was not Horizon's fault, but he wants to blame them, even though they helped save the whole fucking island of Manhattan and possibly the whole world with working with, you know, people like Reed Richards and stuff like that during Spider Island. So I just think that there's a big question mark there. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem logical. But the book itself starts to redeem itself by basically giving a throwdown between the Sinister Six and the Avengers. Now, of course, it's not the whole Avengers, because they can't do that. But they've got, you know, they got the big ones. They've got Cap, they've got Hawkeye, they've got Red Hulk, they've got Spider-Woman, they've got Natasha, they've got, you know, Black Widow, and they've got Spidey, and I'm sure there's somebody else that I'm missing. But none of, like, the new Avengers. You know, there's no Luke Cage, there's no Iron Fist, there's no Daredevil. And Thor. I forgot about Thor. So it's just like the main Avengers team. So it just kind of seems like a mistake, because this should really be kind of like an all hands on deck type of thing. When somebody's threatening to basically kind of almost incinerate everybody on Earth, yeah, this is really something that the Avengers should take seriously and just, you know, not play it safe and just send in their kind of A-team. They should bring in all the players, everybody that they can. But they don't. But what's cool about this is that Spidey's actually leading the charge into this fray, or unto the breach, if you will. So we have that moment, which is awesome, and you have this fight, and of course, while Spidey has all of these different things ready to go for fighting the various members of the Sinister Six, the Sinister Six also have a number of things ready for fighting the Avengers. And fight they do, and let's just say it doesn't end well for the good guys. So it still has me really looking forward to it, although this was, I think, a pretty weak issue overall because of these just kind of sidesteps of logic that came into play for me. And so I'm giving this 3 out of 5. It's, I think, probably the weakest Dan Slott Spider-Man that I've read, which is, I mean, it's still better than a lot of the stuff that's out there, but it just didn't work this time. And you know me, because I love Dan Slott. So, anyway, moving along. So, staying with the webhead, we've got Ultimate Spider-Man number 9. And so we've got kind of the Prowler versus the Scorpion round 2. Because obviously they met before in Mexico. Now Scorpion has come up from Mexico and is ready to lay the smack all over the Prowler because he really pissed him off back there in Mexico. So you've got that melee. And of course, then you've got Miles, you know, still kind of working the kinks out of his persona as Spider-Man and being the next Spider-Man. So that proves to be somewhat difficult for the young man. And, you know, he gets into the, you know, this altercation with the cops. And, you know, not really an altercation, but just more of a kind of a pseudo-threatening conversation. But you know, the real trick to this issue ultimately is in just the last couple pages, which is when Miles receives a text message from his uncle, from the Prowler, asking, you know, basically saying, "I'll leave you alone if you do this one thing for me." Now, of course, we don't find out what that thing is. We won't until next issue. But can Miles really afford to do this? I mean, will it be something where they just, you know, where it basically will be a trap? Because that's what I'm feeling that it will be, is that basically it's just going to set up a trap for both the Scorpion and Spider-Man to kind of fall in and, you know, hopefully kind of finish each other off, and then Aaron's problems are solved. So it's an interesting end game that Uncle Aaron is playing at. The pacing is sort of starting to drag a little bit. We have, because I feel that there's a lot of story to tell here, and it's not afraid to be dense, and that's fine. But the pacing of this issue just felt a little bit sluggish, but the art, David Marquez, I've never heard of him before. I don't think I've ever seen his stuff before, or at least nothing that I can immediately remember is like, oh, wow, I know who this guy is. But I don't know who this guy is, and his art was fantastic. I mean, just blew me away. I thought that was great. So, I mean, that in and of itself was strong enough to give it at least a 3. And, of course, Bendis, still writing a really solid comic. Like I said, just the pacing is off here. And ultimately, I give it a 4 out of 5. And we've got Daredevil 10.1. And we've got, it's quote-unquote a good jumping on point because basically we've got Matt Murdock coming into prison to see someone that he just put there, this new villain called Pyromania. And he's pyrokinetic, obviously. And he's basically, he is demanding release. He wants an appeal on his case because he's claiming cruel and unusual punishment. And once Matt actually steps into his cell, he's sensing that there is something going on here, that they're actually using some sort of strange ultrasonics or something like that to keep him both cold and hot at the same time to stop him from using his pyrokinetic abilities. And, there's one line, it's like he wants to chase a bottle of aspirin with a quart of scotch because he's just, Matt is feeling so sick in there because of what they're pumping in, because of, because it really goes, this is really about his senses and what he can do. And because it is a 0.1 issue, and if you're not familiar with the character of Daredevil, then this is a relatively good introduction, but also, of course, you kind of have to know about him because you're not going to understand what the Omega Drive is. You're not going to understand that, yes, he has been outed as Daredevil. I mean, all of those things are explained. Mark Waid does a really good job of explaining all of those things. But what really is going on, the real reason that Murdock that Daredevil put this Pyromania into prison in the first place is because he attacked him. He was looking to attack Murdock, but of course comes Daredevil and puts him in there, and then here's Matt Murdock. But the reason that he wanted to get to Murdock in the first place was because he knows that Murdock / Daredevil, again, still thinking that he could be Daredevil, knows that he has the Omega Drive, and the Hellfire Club wants it because the Hellfire Club is somehow in league with Black Spectre, which is one of the 5 major terror organizations that the information on the Omega Drive is. So basically, with that kind of taken care of, as Matt does, he goes in front of the teams of AIM, Hydra, and the Black Spectre, and the Shadow Council, and the French team, I can never remember their name, and basically says, look, make your move, because here I am, and this is what's going to happen when you make your move. And he basically shows Black Spectre being completely taken down because he's had the information on the Omega Drive uploaded to, like he says, like from everybody, from the CIA to the Boy Scouts. Just, he's definitely, again, he's more, he still has that kind of dark edge to him, but he's got definitely more of the kind of Mark Waid wink in his eye than he has had previously. The only problem that I really have with this issue is the artist Khoi Pham. I'm not a fan at all. I did not care for the artwork at all in this issue. I thought it was not good. And that unfortunately took what would probably be damn close to a 5 out of 5 down to a 4 out of 5. I mean, it's a really, really well-written issue. It just, like I said, the art, with the exception of the very first page, just falls completely flat and doesn't work for me at all. So, got to go with my gut. So, Daredevil 10.1, 4 out of 5. So, we're going to be back with more talk about more comics. So, stay tuned.